Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, when you think about insurance fraud, maybe your mind goes to old movies.
Yeah, like film noir, double indemnity, that kind of thing. Or maybe something lighter.
Right, or even the fortune cookie, you remember. Jack Lemmon faking he's paralyzed after a little bump.
Exactly. Just a one-off scam. Seems clever. Maybe a bit outlandish, but isolated.
But the sources we looked at paint a really different picture. That fortune cookie plot, it's actually, well, it's happening a lot. And it's huge.
And it's not isolated at all. It's big business, highly organized crime, which is what really jumped out at me from the research. We're way past petty theft here.
Yeah, me too. So in this deep dive, we're going to unpack exactly the scale, how these staged accident rings work, based on the materials you sent over.
And the scale is just, wow. Before we even get into the how, let's talk numbers. Overall insurance fraud drains what? Over $300 billion a year from the economy.
300 billion, yeah.
Yeah.
That includes something they call claims leakage.
Yeah.
Which is basically just wasted money, right?
Yeah.
Money paid out by insurers when it shouldn't have been.
It's a massive hidden cost. And then you narrow it down just to these organized staged accidents.
And that's still a huge number on its own.
It's about $20 billion every single year, just from these specific scams. Think about that, tens of millions pocketed by these individual rings exploiting the system.
Okay, let's unpack this then. We get that the money is massive, $20 billion. But how do they actually do it on that scale? When we say organized criminal rings, who are we talking about? Who's involved?
Right. It's really a structured conspiracy. It's not random. You need everyone playing their part. The sources point to like three main pillars.
Okay.
You've got complicit attorneys, lawyers who were in on it, managing the whole process. Then you have the actors, the supposed victims who fake the injuries.
The ones in the car.
Exactly. And then crucially, you have corrupt medical providers. They often call them medical mills.
Medical mills. Okay.
Yeah. Their goal, working together, is to fake serious injuries from road accidents and then just max out the medical reimbursements and the payouts from lawsuits.
And the initial setup, the crash itself.
Yeah.
Sounds incredibly dangerous. We saw this term, the slammer. What's that about?
The slammer is the driver they use to intentionally cause the crash. They deliberately hit another vehicle.
Wow.
And ideally, they target something big, like an 18-wheeler truck, because that makes the fake injuries seem more plausible and the potential insurance payout is much higher.
That really shows the calculation involved.
Ooh.
And the risk.
Oh, the stakes are incredibly high. Look, there was this one slammer mentioned, a guy named Garrison. He apparently took part in almost 100 of these staged scams.
100?
Yeah. But then he decided to cooperate, turned witness for the FBI.
Okay.
His former associates weren't happy. They ordered a hit. He was murdered, shot like 10 times.
Jesus. That tells you everything about how serious these rings are. A 10-bullet fusillade.
It's a deadly business. The price of silence is real.
So that puts the risk in perspective.
Okay.
But okay, the crash happens. Maybe the injuries are faked or exaggerated. Where does the bulk of that $20 billion actually come from? Is it the immediate insurance claim, or is it more from the lawsuits later?
It's mostly from the back end. It's driven by those medical mills we mentioned. They're the engine generating the inflated costs.
How do they do that?
Well, these clinics are absolutely essential because they create the paper trail of massive damages needed for the big lawsuits later on. A key way they do this is through something called upcoding.
Upcoding. Okay, could you break that down simply for us?
Yeah.
And for, the listener?
Absolutely. So upcoding is pretty straightforward, really. The clinic sends bills to the insurance company, but they use billing codes for really expensive medical services.
That they never actually perform.
Exactly. Or maybe they did something minor, but bill for something major. So instead of billing for a basic x-ray that costs, say, a few $100, they bill for a full spinal MRI, thousands of dollars.
Go.
It's just artificial inflation of the bill, all designed purely to jack up the claim amount as high as possible.
And this supports these huge operations.
Yeah.
We saw that example, the $31 million ring in New York, run by this litigation funder, Adrian Alexander. But even that was dwarfed by another one, right? The $60 million racket, masterminded by a guy named Bradley Pierre.
Yeah, the Pierre case is, well, it's next level in terms of audacity. What they allegedly did there was actually bribe 911 operators.
Bribe 911, seriously.
Seriously. So that when people called 911 after an accident, could be a real one or one of their staged ones, the operator would steer them directly to medical clinics controlled by Pierre's organization.
Wow, so they captured the system right from the first call for help.
Right. It shows this deep systemic corruption that just smooths the path for the fraud from the absolute beginning.
Okay, so connecting the dots, organized rings, targeting big payouts, corrupting the system. It makes sense then that this isn't happening just anywhere. It's
Yeah.
concentrated, right?
Definitely. The fraud isn't spread out evenly. These operations pop up and really thrive in specific places, usually where there are weaknesses they can exploit. High-traffic states are prime territory.
And the data backs that up. We saw the numbers. Fraudulent crash claims are heavily concentrated. The 2023 data had California way out in front, over 5,000 incidents.
5,366, yeah.
Then New York, around 1,700, and Florida, about 1,100.
Those are the big three hotspots.
And it's clearly getting worse in some areas. New York saw, what, a 14% jump just from 2022 to 2023?
Mm-hmm. And New Jersey was even more dramatic, a 58% increase in that same year. Something's definitely escalating there.
So given this concentration and how organized they are, why the focus on big trucks, tractor trailers, and also these transportation network companies, TNCs like Uber and Lyft cars?
It really comes down to money. Simple as that. It's tied directly to the insurance requirement.
The minimum coverage limits.
Exactly. Trucks and commercial vehicles, including TNCs in many places, have much, much higher mandatory insurance limits than your personal car.
How much higher are we talking?
Well, for a standard commercial truck, the federal minimum is $750,000. But policies often go up to $1 million or even more. Compare that to maybe $25,000 or $50,000 for a personal auto liability policy.
Okay, so if you're staging an accident, you go where the potential payout is biggest. Makes sense.
Precisely. It gives the fraud ring a much higher ceiling for their inflated claims and lawsuits.
And the impact on the insurers who focus on those markets must be huge.
It's crippling. We saw that quote from the American Transit Insurance Company, A&Eckett. They insure a lot of TNCs. They estimated that something like 60 to 70% of their claims from TNCs are fraudulent.
60 to 70%. That's almost unbelievable. It just underlines the sheer scale.
It really does.
Which, again, brings us back to the cost for everyone else.
Yeah.
That $20 billion a year isn't just absorbed by insurance companies, is it?
Not at all. It gets passed on. It means higher premiums for basically everyone who buys insurance, especially if you have a commercial policy, but it affects personal auto rates too. We all pay for it.
But beyond the financial cost, there's this really dark human side to it, especially with related scams like faked slip and fall accidents.
Yeah, the feigned trips or falls, they often feed into the same corrupt medical mills, and this is where it gets particularly cruel, I think.
This part of the research was tough to read. They're recruiting actual people.
Right. Often people in really difficult financial situations, maybe from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, they get offered what sounds like a lifeline, but it's peanuts compared to the scam's total value.
How much are they typically offered?
The sources said maybe $1,000, maybe up to $2,500.
Just a couple $1,000s. To do what exactly?
To fake an accident, either a car crash or a fall, and then agree to undergo major unnecessary surgery, usually soft tissue stuff like back surgery.
Unnecessary surgery. That's horrifying.
It is. And these aren't minor procedures. They're talking about spinal fusions, which can be billed out at up to $500,000, or laminectomies, maybe $150,000.
For a procedure the person doesn't even need.
Doesn't need, and which is incredibly painful, carries huge risks, and can leave them with permanent damage, lifelong pain, restricted mobility.
And they do this for maybe $2,000.
Yeah. One of the attorneys quoted in the material described these people as just desperate. It's seeing it as maybe their only way to get some kind of financial security, however small.
It's just exploitation, pure and simple. Exploiting vulnerability just as much as they exploit insurance rules.
Absolutely. So, okay, the problem is massive. It's organized. It's preying on people. How is the industry actually fighting back? They can't just sit there and take these $20 billion hits every year.
No, they're definitely pushing back.
Yeah.
And their main legal tool seems to be the ICO Act, Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act.
ICO Act.
Yeah.
That's usually associated with, like, mob cases, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's incredibly powerful here, too, because it lets the insurance companies take what look like hundreds of separate, maybe small-time accidents or clinic visits, and bundle them all together into one huge lawsuit. They can argue, look, these aren't isolated incidents. This is all part of one big, ongoing criminal conspiracy.
And the power of ARCO is the damages, isn't it? You can get triple damages.
That's the kicker. Triple damages. So it gives them immense leverage against these entire networks, the lawyers, the clinics, everyone involved.
And are these ARCO suits actually working?
It seems like it. The scale and speed are pretty impressive. Take that ADIC lawsuit we mentioned, the TNC insurer. They filed a massive RICO suit in December 2024.
Okay.
The filing itself was nearly 700 pages long.
Hmm.
named 186 defendants, doctors, lawyers, clinics, the works. They were asking for $153 million in actual damages,
Which, with triple damages, could mean.
potentially $450 million, almost $500 million.
Wow. And what happened?
Well, what's really striking is how fast things moved. By February 2025, just 2 months later, ADIC had already settled with 141 out of those 186 defendants.
That's incredibly quick. That suggests the defendants knew they were caught, right? The pressure must have been immense.
Must have been. And it's not just ADIC doing this. Uber itself is filing RKO suits. They've filed in New York, Miami, LA, going after law firms and clinics, they say, are running these fake accident and unnecessary surgery schemes targeting their drivers or passengers.
So the TNCs are fighting back directly, too.
Yeah. And other big insurance names are in the mix. James River, Union Mutual, Liberty Mutual, State Farm. They're all using RK now.
Okay, so that's the legal fight back. Is there anything happening on the legislative side? Are lawmakers trying to close any loopholes?
There is movement there, too.
Yeah.
Just recently, in April 2025, a couple of representatives, Collins and Gill, introduced a new bill in Congress. It's called the Staged Accident Fraud Prevention Act.
Okay, what would that do?
Pretty simple, actually. It would make intentionally staging a car crash a specific federal crime.
Seems kind of obvious that it should be, doesn't it?
You'd think so, but apparently having a specific federal statute helps with prosecution and deterrence. And the motivation behind it, according to Representative Collins, is about costs. He talked about stopping these nuclear verdicts.
Nuclear verdicts, right. Those are those massive, completely out-of-whack jury awards, aren't they?
Exactly. Awards that go way beyond any reasonable measure of damages. Collins argues these huge verdicts are what the fraud rings aim for, and they end up bankrupting truckers and driving up costs for everyone. So this bill is partly aimed at curbing that.
Makes sense. So you have lawsuits, you have potential new federal laws. What about, like, deeper fixes, policy changes to take away the incentive for this fraud in the first place?
Yeah, experts are definitely talking about that, looking at the underlying structures that make staged accidents so profitable.
And a lot of that seems to focus on states like New York, right? With
Yeah.
their no-fault insurance laws.
Exactly. New York's no-fault system, for example, makes insurers cover medical bills up to a pretty high limit for taxis and for hire vehicles, like $200,000.
$200,000 per person, potentially?
Right. And the argument is that this high threshold, while maybe well-intentioned, has kind of accidentally created this perfect environment for fraud. It gives those medical mills a huge target to shoot for, with inflated bills and unnecessary treatments.
So what are the proposed fixes for that? How do you disarm them?
Two main ideas seem to keep coming up in the policy discussions. First, bring in a fee schedule.
Like a price list for medical procedures.
Basically, yeah. Set reasonable, standardized costs for common treatments related to accidents. That would stop clinics from just making up exorbitant prices out of thin air.
Okay, that makes sense. Puts a cap on the billing. What's the second idea?
The second one is about tackling something called phantom damages.
Phantom damages, what are those?
Okay, this is crucial. Imagine a fraudulent clinic bills the insurance company, say, $100,000 for surgeries after a staged accident.
Right.
But maybe because of network agreements or negotiations, the insurance company actually only pays the clinic $20,000 to settle that medical bill.
Okay, so the clinic accepts $20 there.
Yes. But then, in the lawsuit against the driver who was hit or their insurer, the fraudsters claimed the full $100,000, the amount originally billed as damages, even though the actual cost paid was only $20,000. That extra $80,000 is the phantom damage.
Ah, I see. They're suing for money that was never actually spent or lost by the clinic.
Exactly. It's based on an inflated, unreal number. So prohibiting phantom damages would mean they can only claim the amount actually paid, the $20,000 in our example. That drastically reduces the potential profit from the lawsuit side of the scam.
That seems like a really important fix. Takes away a huge chunk of the incentive.
Yeah, definitely. So those are policy ideas.
Yeah.
But insurers are also changing how they operate internally, right, to try and catch this stuff earlier.
Yeah, they're not just relying on lawsuits after the fact. They're using tools to flag suspicious claims up front. One tactic mentioned was filing more declaratory judgments.
Okay, what does that mean in practice?
A declaratory judgment is basically the insurance company going to court proactively and saying, hey, we think this claim looks fraudulent or isn't covered by the policy. Can you, the court, please rule on whether we actually have to pay it?
So it shifts the burden. Instead of just paying and maybe suing later, they challenge it right away.
Right. And the source mentioned one insurer that really ramped up its use of decractions, as they call them. They ended up resolving suspicious claims for just 16% of the original amount billed. Huge savings.
16%. Wow. What else are they doing?
Another key thing is requiring examinations under oath, or EUOs.
Like a formal interview.
Exactly. It's a formal, sworn statement taken from the claimant or sometimes even the medical provider as part of the claims investigation. The insurer can ask detailed questions about the accident, the injuries, the treatment.
And if things don't add up.
Or if the claimant or provider repeatedly fails to show up for the EUO, that becomes a massive red flag for fraud. It gives the insurer grounds to deny the claim.
So better internal checks, legal action, potential legislation. But there's still a gap, isn't there? You mentioned how few states actually have specific laws against staging accidents.
Yeah, that's a strange anomaly. Florida is apparently the only state with a specific law making staged accidents a distinct crime.
Just Florida, despite California, New York, Texas, Maryland, all being known hotspots.
Seems that way. Which suggests the legal framework hasn't really caught up with the scale and nature of this specific type of organized crime in most places.
Okay.
There's also a public perception issue, maybe?
How so?
Well, fraud might persist partly because some people see it as a victimless crime, right? Just hitting some big faceless insurance company.
Yeah, you hear that sometimes.
So organizations like the NICB, the National Insurance Crime Bureau, and state insurance departments are trying to push back on that narrative, educating the public that, no, we all pay for this through higher costs, and real people, like those recruited for unnecessary surgeries, are genuinely harmed.
Okay, so this has been, well, quite the deep dive into a pretty dark part of the insurance world. If we were to boil it down, the core takeaway seems to be this isn't random.
Not at all. Staged accident fraud is highly organized, it's financially massive, that $20 billion figure is key, and it thrives by ruthlessly exploiting specific things.
Like the high insurance limits on trucks and commercial vehicles.
Yep. And loopholes in state laws, like no-fault insurance thresholds.
And maybe most disturbingly, by exploiting desperate, vulnerable people.
It's a really nasty cycle of greed built quite literally on causing human suffering.
So here's a final thought for you, for the listener to chew on. We heard that these unnecessary high-stakes spinal surgeries can be billed out for up to $500,000.
Yeah.
$500,000. And the actual people recruited for these scams, the ones whose bodies are put through this, potentially damaged forever. They get paid maybe $1,000, maybe $2,500.
It's a tiny fraction.
Right. So if that's the payout at the bottom, what does that massive gap tell you about the risk calculation and just the sheer scale of the profit margins for the attorneys and the operators of those medical mills sitting right at the top of these criminal pyramids? Something to think about next time you see a fender bender, maybe.